Pokemon X and Y came out a decade ago. God, that makes me feel so incredibly old. Anyway, the ruckus back in the day was all about whether or not X and Y were even considered to be good games, and we as a community never really came to an objective conclusion. It was Schrodinger's Pokemon game. It both was and wasn't. For you see, Kalos brought us Megas. It was the first 3DS Pokemon game. A bunch of new mons were introduced with the titles. It had a great post-game, but for whatever reason, people weren't as connected to it as they'd hoped to be. And so, I wanted to revisit Kalos from a research perspective. We're gonna get to the bottom of this, you and me, together. Are Pokemon X and Y good, or are they bad? Well, I came to the conclusion that the only way to really determine that was with a run that covered absolutely everything there is to cover. A 100% run. Doing it all to decide whether or not it's even worth doing. So, I'm gonna make my way through Kalos, beating the main game in its entirety, doing all the detective missions and post-game stuff, all the way down to things like collecting every single TM, acquiring every berry, and for the record, there's a berry that to obtain, you have to win 200 consecutive competitive style battles in the Battle Mansion. I'm gonna collect every Mega Stone and complete a living dex, all to decide whether or not it was even worth doing in the first place. P.S. Do not try this at home. So we're going to be running this video in chapters because that's the best way that I can think to compartmentalize the absolute cabbagery that is about to ensue. Because to 100% run a game, as you might expect, there's a lot that goes into it. So let's call phase 1 what it is, the main story. For the sake of your time, and frankly mine as well, I'm going to be skimming a lot of this. It wasn't a Nuzlocke, so we're going to be pretty much speed running the game. However, be aware that as we go, I'll be doing some unorthodox things to make later phases a little bit easier. Anyway, let's do this. I got rudely headbutted awake by a fletchling, changed out of my pajamas, went downstairs where my mum said my friends were waiting for me, which is a lie because I have no friends. I am my only friend, and together, I'll beat schizophrenia. I met Serena and Shauna outside of my house, and after spamming through some dialogue, it was time to head over to Aqua Cord, where we then met Trevor and Tierno. I'm liking this group's alliteration. We would make a good glee club. I asked the group to call me Sir because frankly, I'm better than them, and then I met with Professor Sycamore, who let me take with me the best starter line to ever grace this franchise. That is not up for debate. I named him Gumball, then Shauna challenged me to a battle, I wiped the floor with her, then I went home to tell my mum that I got a starter and hand her a letter from Sycamore. Mumsy gave me some more clothes and a map, and then after saying goodbye to the family Rhyhorn, it was time. I was independent. The world was my oyster. On Route 2, I caught a fletchling and called it Blossom, who was going straight on the team. Then, to make my life easier later on, I stopped and caught myself Bunnelby, Weedle, Pidgey, Scatterbug, and Zigzagoon. See, later we're gonna have to backtrack to complete the living dex, but completing the Pokédex is also on our to-do list, so I'm catching a lot of Pokemon on my journey to make it less tedious later on. We then made our way to Santaloon Forest, where we caught Caterpie, Pansage, Pansear, Kakuna, left to get some more Pokeballs, got a Pikachu called Raven who will also be joining us on our adventure, and a Panpour before clearing the forest and making it to Route 3 with my a cappella group. The Barbarical Shop Quartet. You haven't heard of us, but you will. On Route 3 I stopped to catch Burmy, Bidoof, Azurill, and Dunsparce before getting into Santaloon, and at this point I realised just how ridiculous this challenge was actually gonna be. I was already like 2 hours in and we haven't actually made it to the first real city. Anyway, before even attempting the first gym, I decided to try and clear Route 22 first. So we made our way there, caught Litleo, Farfetch'd, Riolu, who I named Samurai Jack, and finally Psyduck. So now I could happily backtrack to Santaloon to take on the gym. I buckled some girl's Zigzagoon outside the gym building and stole her rollerblades before barging my way in. I navigated the spiderweb maze, beat up a bunch of trainers, and with no hesitation squared off against Viola in her weird insect-inspired underground movie set. And I didn't consent to this, so I'd better not see some bootleg video starring Gentle Dude. Viola, do not test me, I will sue. Anyway, I pretty much had Raven kill the Surskit and had Blossom KO the Vivian with a few pecks. With that, the first gym badge was ours, and we'd made a small but significant-ish dent in the fabric of this challenge. Listen, at this point in the game, I'm having a good time. The intro dialogue's a little bit tedious, but the locations have been pretty, the professor's a smoke show, the starters are cool, the gym had a really vibey yet casting couch-esque design. I don't know, man, so far I wouldn't place this any lower than the intro to any of the other titles, but hey, I'm biased, I don't really complain much, and Pokemon has been my favourite game since I discovered it when I was like 6, so let's continue. Progressing on to Route 4, I did some Pokédex grinding, catching Flabébé, Combi, Ralts, who I named DD and will be joining the team, Budu, Skitty, and Ladybug. Before finally being allowed to access Route 4, I met some coordinated strangers who asked me if I knew about the Pokemon Flabébé, which of course, I mean, I just caught one. They explained that there's a whole new typing added in the Fairy type, and eventually introduced themselves as Sina and Dexio. After getting the TM for return, I was granted access to Lumiose City, where I was escorted to the lab, and after making my way to the 3rd floor, I was greeted by the intimidatingly handsome, PhD-wielding research professor. Arceus really took her time on this guy, didn't she? The professor explained how he was originally not even even gonna give me a starter, but apparently when he heard that my mum, who is canonically a professional Rhyhorn racer, was moving to town, he changed his mind, which, I mean, I'm not complaining. I love my frog. Also, that's absolutely cap since 2 other people got a starter as well. Regardless, we're joined by Serena and Shauna, who bask in awe as I teach the professor a lesson about telling lies to children, and after getting his butt handed to him in combat, he offers us yet another starter Pokemon. Which, okay, let me talk on this. I'm enjoying these games, but as a 20-something-year-old teen pop sensation, I'd argue that you're making this a little too easy. So I chose Bobby Poo and called it Rigby, then after being granted the Venusaurite, the first of many Mega Stones that we're gonna have to collect, Trevor and Tierno arrived at the lab, meaning the Barbarical Shop quartet is back together. But I guess we're a quintet, because there's 5 of us. So now we're asked to do some research into Mega Stones, and believe me, mate, you don't even know the half of it. I'm gonna be doing my research, your research, and everyone else's research. Sit back, I got this. Now, we get introduced to some overtly Auburn, power-hungry business tycoon named Lysandra. What a name, Lysandra. That name has gravity, bro. Upon initial inspection, I'm pretty sure Lysandra is just a pyro pretending to be a guy, but regardless of that, he speaks perfect English. And he explains his desires to make the world a more beautiful place, which, listen, I'm sure he means to do humanely and with peaceful and democratic means. Doesn't this guy just ooze with integrity and honesty and... who am I lying to? This guy looks like Mufasa. Anyway, the gang splits up. I make my way to Cafe Soleil. We meet Lysandra again, this time with a lady named Diantha, who I'm pretty sure I recognize from somewhere. Oh, that's right. She's my future ex-wife. She says that she's a trainer as well and that she's looking forward to battling with us someday, but I can read between the lines. I know what she means. Serena said something too, but I wasn't really listening, and upon leaving the conversation, I got lectured by some fella about O-powers. The lights went out and we bonded with a stranger, and I guess that was... whatever that was. Regardless, I make my way to Route 5 where I bump into someone called Corinna and her Lucarios. She tells me that her Lucario likes my aura, and realistically, who could blame it? I mean, I am a tall, handsome, eccentric, rich, tall, humble young man in peak physical form with no ego, but regardless of my stating of the obvious, it feels like it's been a while since we've actually made any real progress. So to move forward, I decided to do some dex work. I caught Plusle, Minun, Gumball evolved, and so did Blossom. I caught Scraggy, Pancham, Furfrou, Abra, Gulpin, Doduo, and finally Skiddo, before opting to make some real progress in the story, wiping the floor with Tierno in hand-to-hand, or rather mon-to-mon combat, and making my way to Camfrere Town. Now, we had a list to get through, and at the top of it was to visit the you know, the castle, where I was greeted with Shauna and some guy who was still freshly sweating after a taekwondo session. He told us the history of the castle, and after some guy interrupted our chinwag, we followed him out to Route 7, and to our dismay, we found a Snorlax preventing us from making any progress. We're then told that we need to go to Parfum Palace to retrieve a flute to wake it up, and so I guess we're doing that now. This feels like a lot of dialogue to be following between Gym 1 and Gym 2. I won't lie, the pacing here caught me off guard, but hey, I'm just here for the ride. On the way to the palace, Rigby evolved after a couple of unskippable battles, and before entering the palace itself, I opted to stop at Route 6 for some good old dex filling. I caught Oddish, Sentra, Esper, Honedge, who I named Marceline, Ninkada, and Kecleon. I've never really been one to try completing the dex while I'm on my main story grind, and I won't lie, it was actually a lot of fun. You explore more of the areas, the gameplay feels like it lasts longer, and you're accomplishing more, and it gives it a slightly less linear feel. Regardless of my silly opinions, I got to Parfum Palace, and get this, they made me, a very visibly obvious adolescent, pay 1,000 quid just to get in. Some guy was distressed about his Furfrou, which led us to playing a cool puzzle game to trap the Pokemon and return it to its owner against its very will, and as a reward we met the guy on the castle balcony to watch a firework display. Things got a little heated. Shauna tried to kiss. However, after swiftly rejecting our advances, we got gifted the flute we came here for. But I had to pay $1,000 and shepherd some guy's Pokemon for it, so what you call a gift, I call compensation. On Route 7 we used the flute and the Snorlax rose in a PTSD-like fit of rage and attacked on sight. And this is where my cabbagery came in. I forgot that I was 100% in the game here, and in the heat of the moment, I killed the Snorlax instead of catching it. Which means I'll have to find another way to get it later on when I retrace my steps to pick up any Pokemon that I haven't gotten yet. So for peace of mind, on Route 7, I caught Hoppip, Krogunk, Smeargle, Roselia, Volbeat, Ducklet, Illumise, and Swirlix, before we were met with young Trevor, who showed us to the Battle Chateau. We engage in fisticuffs with Trevor and Tierno, partnering up with Serena and dancing the Dance of Victory together. Which brings us to the next location, Connection Cave, where I got my hands on a Zubat, Meditite, Axew, and Whismur. Then on Route 8, where we caught Wingull, Mienfoo, Spoink, Bagon, Drifloon, Zangoose, Inkay, Absol, Tailo, and Seviper, which was an interesting one. Seviper only shows up in hordes of Zangoose, and when you encounter that horde, all of the Zangoose try to kill the Seviper, making it actually quite hard to catch. So anyway, we made our way to Ambret Town, and on our quest to find out more about Mega Evolution, we went to the Fossil Lab, where they tell us they don't know anything about Mega Evolution except that they're linked to Megastones, which, I mean, Yeah. Making our way to Route 9, we're able to hop on the back of a Rhyhorn, which I can't imagine is very forgiving on the old gonads. And on our bumpy ride, we catch Sandile, Helioptile, and Hippopotas on our way to Glitter Cave. I'm actually shocked at how much happens between Gym 1 and Gym 2 in this game. This pacing is madness. Anyway, Glitter Cave. There's loads of encounters, and most of which you have to reset the shadow encounter, which takes a whole lot of time. And if I'm being honest with you, I just wanted to get my second badge, so I noted who I was able to catch and who I wasn't, so I could come back for them at the end. We did manage to grab Machop and Onyx, DD evolved into Curlia, we grabbed the TM for Shadow Claw, and caught a Mawile too before advancing onwards to find some incredibly orange person in our way. And after beating them to a pulp and then one more identical person, Samurai Jack evolved into Lucario and we caught a Woobat. Serena joined us and we were able to take out the other two Grunties together, and after making our way through the deepest part of the cave, we were given the option for yet another gift Pokemon. Cool! Between the Jaw and the Sail Fossils, I went with Jaw because it sounded cooler, and with that I could make my way back to Ambret Town. I revived the fossil instantly into a Tyrant and made my way through the beach towards Silage Village. I went back to the bicycle shop to buy a bicycle, and after rock climbing my way up the gym with no harness, it was finally time for our second gym battle, which, holy moly, it feels like at least a week since I got the first one. We've been on this road for a while. Grant was the second gym leader, and Samurai Jack was able to Oko his ace Amora. Tyrant was a little more menacing, but a combination of Rigbait and Gumball floored it. And with that, we walked away with the TM for Rock Tomb and our second gym badge. So, let's evaluate. The story at this point was long. I'm not saying it was bad, I'm just saying whoever paced this game made some interesting decisions. I'm a sucker for a good B story, don't get me wrong, but it feels like between Gym 1 and Gym 2, they took that to another level, and we had to follow a B story followed by a C, D, E, and F story. I'm all for more content, but in this instance, it was a lot that took from my main goals as a gamer. Plus, there were so many side characters, motivations, and plot lines that were introduced. All I'm saying is if I'm your average 10-year-old playing this, they're probably not following what the heck's going on at this point. In saying that though, I also really like this gym's design. The fireworks show, although unnecessary, was pretty, and the character individuality is cool. A lot of memorable characters, for sure. I'm still having a good experience, I'm just picking holes where there are holes. Try to be objective, in the name of science. To Route 10 we go, and to help with our Dex quest, I caught myself an Eevee, Nosepass, Snubble, Holucha, Yanma, Sigilyph, Houndour, Emolga, and Golett. On my excursion through the route, I got ambushed by a Team Flare Grunt who was lurking behind a stone wall, and after spanking the Ginger and his pals, I arrived at Geosenge Town. A grunt exclaimed that Geosenge Town was made of stones, which I probably could have deduced on my own, to be honest. Regardless, when I went to head east, it appeared to be blocked by some backpackers, so instead I went northwest where I found a Team Flare member who walked off into the distance. Simultaneously, the backpackers decided to move on, and so I was free to make passage towards my next destination. However, before I could, I was stopped by Corinna and her Lucarios, and this time she wanted to battle. After having no issues defeating her, I came to wonder, does this defeat not warrant a badge? I mean, we're not in the gym setting, sure, but I beat her, and she is the Shalour City gym leader, so like, whatever. To distract myself from that injustice, I opted to hunt for some more pocket monsters on Route 11. I caught a Hariyama who I named Mandy, a Chingling, Staravia, Nidoran female, Sock, Dedenne, Stunky, Nidorino, Nidorina, and Nidoran male. I then spent a genuinely ludicrous amount of time searching for a horde of Starly, but to no avail. After about 45 minutes of nothing, I admitted defeat and moved on. Then I retraced my steps because I realized that at this point, I didn't pick up the old rod from Ambret Aquarium, which is a rookie mistake. So from there, I went straight to the beach of Route 8 to catch a Love Disc, then went back to Route 6 to grab a TM, but didn't want to spend too long running around with the old rod, so for now, I just fished on Route 22 where I picked up a Magikarp. I stopped by the hotel in Ambret 2 and talked to a girl who gave us the TM for Nature Power. Then I figured since I was here already, I might as well get the encounters I first missed in Glitter Cave. I did this in such a weird and roundabout way, I know. Humblest apologies, kind internet stranger, for I am a cabbage and I do things wrong, frequently. So I picked up Solrock, Rhyhorn, Cubone, Lunatone, and Kangaskhan, and after heading north of Route 11, I found myself in Reflection Cave where I picked up Carbink, Mr. Mime, Roggenrola, Solosis, Mime Jr., Wobbuffet, and Ferroseed. Tierno then came out of nowhere and flashed us. He gave me the TM for Flash, and in progressing a little more, Rigbait evolved into Venusaur. With that, we were able to make our way out of Reflection Cave. Diddy also evolved into Gardevoir, but I forgot to record that. Regardless, my friends, we're in Shalour City, making progress, taking ass, kicking names. As soon as I step foot in the city, Tierno and Trevor stop me in my tracks, and Trevor asks me to compare dexes, and proportionally, mine's bigger. According to my friends, the professor wanted us to visit the Tower of Mastery to meet the Mega Evolution Guru, and so we made our way to the castle at the end of the beach. On our way there, Tierno gives me an intriguing stone that he found, and upon arrival at the castle, we find ourselves wandering into the confines of a room under a Lucario statue. Inside was the Mega Evolution Guru and Karina, and a bed. And a table, and nothing else. Geodude only knows the nature of this relationship. But listen, that's not my place. He tells us that the rock that we were given earlier was just an ordinary rock, which is dumb, and after hearing some noise going on outside, we decided to investigate. Come to find out, the rest of the gang had arrived. After exchanging pleasantries with everyone, the guru revealed Karina to be his granddaughter, which makes me a terrible person for the joke I made earlier. And after being taught some more about Mega Evolutions and what they really are, the old guy had Serena and I fight to decide who gets to fight Karina later for a Mega Ring. After obliterating that battle, we were granted access to the Shalour City Gym. Let's do this. I entered the gym where I essentially had to roller skate my way through every single gym trainer in the place, and with zero prior training, I'm pretty damn good at it if I do say so myself. After completing the challenge, it was time to beat Karina. Again. She led Mienfu, but DD made quick work of it. Then after she wasted both hyper potions on her Machoke, we took it out with ease, and the only mon left was her ace, Holucia. 2 confusions were all it took, and we left the gym unscathed and with another badge in pocket. And with the TM for power up punch. So after beating Karina's gym, we made our way back to the tower, and after scaling it and getting to the balcony, I'm met yet again by Karina. It was decided that this would be where I would be given the honor of a mega ring, and so Karina essentially gave me one of her Lucarios on loan so that we could battle to get a fuel for the ring. 3 times I've battled this woman in succession. She's obsessed with me. So after winning again, Karina professes her love and offers me one of her Lucarios, but I declined. Nobody could replace Samurai Jack. So I swiped the ring and moved on towards Route 12, but before heading in, we were stopped by Serena, who gave us the TM for Surf. So for some more Dex questings, I caught Slowpoke, Chatot, Pachirisu, Mareep, and by surfing, I caught Mantic and Tentacle. I spoke with a man who was stood next to the Route 12 sign, and he told us a pretty heartwarming story about how his Lapras saved him from drowning, and how now he feels obligated to give me the Lapras since he can't show it the world. He doesn't have the facilities. And that's heartbreaking, but hey, I mean, I'll show it the world. Or I mean, at least the region. We went on to catch Pinsir, Taurus, and Miltank. Then we reached Coumarine City. In walking down the port side, I received a holo clip from Serena, who warned that she's going to battle me outside of the gym. But before that, I talked to some girl at the cliff of the town and answered her question so that she would give me the TM for Confide. I met up with the professor and Diantha, who gave me the HM for Fly, and now I could go to the gym to fight Serena, but she didn't really pose any threat. So then, before entering the grass gym, I really wanted to go back for that stupid Starly that eluded me earlier, and so I grabbed a Combi out from the box to guarantee hordes with the move Sweet Scent, and I made my way to Route 11 to do just that, and by pure coincidence, after I caught the birdie, Gumball evolved into Greninja. I went back to Reflection Cave on my way back and found the TM for Gyro Ball hidden in a room that can only be seen using the reflection on one of the walls. Now, finally, we could take on our next badge. I did some climbing, some swinging, and in a feat of pure athletic prowess and skill, I made my way up to the gym leader in his library. And he either greets or threatens me with a cartoonishly large pair of scissors, and I was prepped for battle. He led a jump bluff, but I had Blossom the Talonflame. Keep in mind, I'm making sure to not overlevel my Pokemon too much for these gyms so that I can gauge how actually hard/fun they are. The rest of this guy's team consisted of Go-Go and Victory Bell, but Talonflame was comfortably able to take them all out entirely by herself. What a girl boss. So far, I won't lie, the gyms are pretty soft. If you know your type matchups, it feels like a bit of a cakewalk. Plus, nobody has more than 3 Pokemon, and spoilers, no gym leader has more than 3 Pokemon at all. Like, all the way to the end. Not one. Past that, we're not even really halfway into the game, and yet without doing anything to earn them, we've been gifted our original starter, a Kanto starter, a fossilized dragon, and a Lucario who can Mega Evolve, and a Lapras. All of which are incredibly viable Pokemon. Now, I get that it's a kid's game, but damn, let go of my hand for just a second, man. It's getting clammy. Regardless, we take the TM for Grass Knot, slide back down to the entrance, and continue on this ridiculous quest to do, well, everything. Before entering Route 13, I'm stopped by Dexio and Cena, who told me that there's a power outage at the power plant, stopping them from progressing through to Lumiose City. I caught myself a Trapinch, Dug Trio, and Gibble, who I named Huckleberry. And then I headed west to find a Team Flare Grunt blocking anyone from going further past this metal bridge. So, I whoop his arse. He realized that he lost his power plant pass, and then he audibly gave me step-by-step directions for where he lost it, and then didn't move at all. What a lazy grunt. Regardless, we made our way into the power plant, and after beating up every single ginger in the place, I found myself face-to-face with 2 Team Flare admins. They seemed intimidating at first, but each of them only wielded 1 Pokemon, so they were incredibly easy to defeat. After clearing the plant, Dexio and Cena appear conveniently directly after I dealt with all of the bad guys. And they told me that we can now get to Lumiose through Route 13. Wow! I don't even know why did I do that. But this is when we're hit with a cutscene out of nowhere. AZ. He talks about the Pokemon, the flower Pokemon, the Pokemon that was given eternal life. Then he walks out of peripheral view and we're left wondering, what in even the hell was that? So I pretended that it didn't even happen and progressed forth to Lumiose. When we got into the city, Shauna caught up and explained that the power in Lumiose was randomly restored after Team Flare stole it. She asked me if I knew who saved the city's power supply, and being the tall, handsome, rich, buff, tall, hilarious, handsome, tall, humble trainer that I am, I took no credit. She asked me on a date to watch the Lumiose tower light up, and in a brief but powerful moment, I saw in Shauna's eyes that she wanted to touch my butt, so I left. I stopped by the Pokemon Center to change up some things, adding Huckleberry and Mandy to the squad. Then, after a little training, Huck evolved into a Gabite, and at the gym, the leader and his sister were waiting for me outside. We watched the lights turn on, and with that, it was time to face the next gym challenge. This trial was one big game of who's that Pokemon with a couple of battles sprinkled throughout, but again, since I'm a hyper-intelligent prodigy genius brain man, I sailed through it with ease. And so before I knew it, I was stood opposite Clement, and it was time to earn my next badge. He led Emolga, and I used Hairy Mama to beat out the Flying Squirrel. Against Magneton, I used Huckleberry, who was able to Sand Tomb through both of Clement's hyper potions, but Huck was left weak. So against Heliolisk, Clement's final mon, I used Rigby the Venusaur to growth and Razor Leaf to victory. And with that, we're able to claim the badge. We also got the TM for Thunderbolt, and we were looking good. It feels like they've picked up the pacing a bit, which is good. The storyline's still pretty all over with all these characters being introduced. Then past that, the sheer volume of gift mons is madness, but we already knew that. I'm definitely having fun beyond all the tedious parts and the self-inflicted 100% stuff, but the bottom line is I'm still having a good time. I'm having a confusing time, but I'm having a good time. Before moving forward, we were summoned by Professor Smoke Show and the guy who looks like a pyro in a cafe. And so I joined them, and Lysandra talked on his incredibly sinister point of view. He talks about how beautiful Kalos is, but claims that it's riddled with foolish people who don't appreciate it. And the professor commends that and calls him passionate, which is one way to put it. Anyway, I made my way to Route 14 where Trevor and Serena were awaiting me. She challenged me to a battle, I won the battle, then pushed on to catch a Haunter, Skorupi, Weepinbell, Carnivine, Carablast, Quagsire, Gumi, and Shelmet. Then I went back for Gumball so I could get surf encounters. I ran into Shauna, Tierno, and Trevor outside of a super creepy house. We walked in and an old guy told us a scary story, and then he asked if we wanted to pay him for it. Funnily enough though, whether you pay him or not, nothing happens. Like, at all. I surfed for Stunfisk, used my rod to catch Poliwag, and made my way onwards to Laverre City. The first thing I opted to do there was to swap out Mandy the Hariyama for Marceline the Honedge. Then, since the levels allowed for it, I evolved Marceline into a Doublade. I wasted no time and headed straight for the gym, where I was seemingly placed in a dollhouse. I had to teleport through a bunch of different rooms, each with their own individual feng shui, and once I'd managed to do that and beat up the coinciding trainers in each room, it was time to take on Valerie. I led Marceline and Valerie led Mawile. I opted to set up with Swords Dance before using Shadow, Claw, and Sneak respectively to take out Val's lead. Marceline was left a little lower than I'd hoped, so I swapped over to Raven to take on the incoming Mr. Mime. After landing a hit that paras, Raven took pretty crazy damage, so I opted to switch on over to Blossom, who took it out from there. Then, against Valerie's ace and the newly introduced Evolution Sylveon, I brought in our Venusaur. So then, after landing a Poison Powder, Venoshock could finish this fight, giving us the Fairy Badge. And the TM for Dazzling Gleam. I'll say it, bro, I love Sylveon. What a cool way to introduce a new type, and a new evolution. 10 years ago, when I saw Sylveon get revealed, I was overcome with wonder and excitement. Very childlike. Almost as if I was a child. I also love the design of this town, and I'm a fan of the gym. Every gym has felt cool so far. They've all had their own flavor. I know the 100% run is ludicrous, but it really does give me the opportunity to explore these games in a way that I never did. And I'm enjoying that aspect a lot. The plotline feels pretty all over the place, where it's just like too many chefs. Like everyone in the Pokemon meeting had an idea and they just said yes to everything. But hey, I think I'd rather have too much content than not enough. Next on our list was to visit the Pokeball factory. I headed north towards it, and who else but nameless Orange Grunt to greet us? Ah yes, my old friend. I met up with Shauna and Trevor on the stairs leading up to the factory, and Shauna decided to be a hero and run up to get the Team Flare Grunt to let us in. Serena and Tierno caught up with us, and the next thing I knew, Shauna and Trevor were being chased down by the very guy who was blocking the door. And so I saw that as my opportunity to sneak in. After blindly windmill punching my way through all the grunts in the factory, I found myself in the main office alongside the owner of the factory, who's being held hostage by some Team Flare admins. They literally make a bomb threat, but their Pokemon didn't have the facilities to defend their claim, and so we defused the situation, saving this guy's business. He was so thankful that he offered us the option between a big nugget or a mechanism so powerful that it would grant us the power to catch any Pokemon, no matter the level, no matter how rare or powerful, with no chance of fail. I kissed him on the mouth and said please, and he gave me both the ball and the nugget as a symbol of how thankful or possibly in love with me he is. I mean, I'm a good kisser. And so with a dense orb of pure gold and the Master Ball in my bag, it was time to make my way to Route 15, where I could catch a whole bunch of Pokemon to add to the list. Most of them weren't very interesting, except from one. One of them was very interesting. We picked up Mightyena, Fungus, Klefki, Ponyard, Murkrow, Lombre, Floatzel, and... oh my god! Yo! Yo! That's shiny! That's a shiny Warchog, bro! Yo! That's not! Excuse me! There's a shiny on my screen! Yo, that's not... what just happened? I mean, I was hoping to find a shiny in this challenge. I didn't think it would happen. We found one. That's so dumb. Yo! Moving on, we received a holo clip from the reincarnate Mufasa man, who essentially explained how Mega Evolutions exerted their energy and power. He told us that Sycamore had discovered that Mega Evolution releases all of a Pokemon's hidden energy that exhibits a level of power that it could not attain through ordinary evolution. Which, like, welcome to every regional gimmick. But I mean, I guess this was the first to do it though. Side note, the fact that they decided to drop this and envelop in Z moves is preposterous. So I got to Dondamule town, which is quaint. I like it here. It reminds me of Scotland. And as I arrived, Professor Hot Stuff and Dexio appeared together. He explained how he used to go around the region exploring all the different areas and all their distinct flavors, which is funny because that's almost verbatim how I described it. Regardless, he started talking on the legendary Pokemon Xerneas and how those who saw it became overwhelmed by his power and how it looked like a letter X. Anyway, after learning a few things, we could progress north to Frost Cavern. And in making my way through, towards the end of the cave in a small nook of the cavern, some hooligans were holding an Abomasnow hostage. Trevor showed up to help me take on the grunts, which then left me to fight the admin. But even this deep into the game, the admin only has one single Pokemon, which which, listen, in my opinion, that feels a little bit underwhelming. So then Trevor tells me how it scares him when he has to battle Team Flare. Not me though, I'm only scared of one thing. Women. After talking to the Abomasnow, it gave me an Abomasite in thanks, which makes collecting all the Megastones slightly easier. I used an escape rope because I'm lazy, then on Route 17 we were allowed to ride a Mamoswine to plough our way through the 24 feet of snow that seems to have only affected this exact area. Anyway, on my excursion atop a mammoth, I caught me a Snover, a Sneasel, and a Delibird. Abomasnow refused to show up, so I made note to come back for it later, or evolve one from a Snover later. Our journey brought us to Anistar City, where our 7th gym badge awaits. However, before heading into the gym, Serena wants to kiss. Already beat her. Okay. Cool, whatever. I went into the gym and this place has a very cool aesthetic. I'm a fan. Also, the gym leader has a very cool design and name. Olympia. That has gravity, unlike this place. Regardless, we defeat her Sigalith, her Meowstic, and her Slowking with relative ease. And to be honest, even though these gyms aren't too hard, I like that I feel them getting a little bit harder. I personally think she should have gotten more than 3 Pokemon, but still. She uses Calm Mind strats, so that's a teensy step in the right direction. We're bestowed our 7th gym badge and the TM for Calm Mind. Upon leaving the gym, Serena wants another go, and as she's leaning in for a kiss, we're aptly interrupted by a hollow clip from Lysandra. He essentially says that Team Flare are going to revive the ultimate weapon and they're going to kill everyone who doesn't align with their ideals, i.e. all of the non-gingers. So I guess Patters is going to be the lone survivor. So following on with Lysandra's thought process, unproductive fools are consuming our future, and if nothing changes, the world will break out into conflict, which in hindsight, I mean, he's not wrong. Although I don't know if the way to prevent conflict is by committing mass genocide, ridding the world of literally everyone who isn't in your specific cult, but hey, I'm only 10, what do I know? Serena suggests that Lysandra might be hiding out in the Lysandra Cafe, but surely he's not going to hide out in a cafe that's literally named after... Oh, okay, yeah. Cool. At the bottom of the secret stairs, Lysandra's awaiting me and chooses to fight for his ideals. He led Mienfoo against our Mandy. I didn't know that I had acrobatics, so Mandy fell pronto. But it's cool because Blossom was able to use acrobatics to Uno reverse turn 1 and Mienfoo went down. Gyarados was next in, so I swapped over to Raven. We nuzzled and then an Aquatail O-code. I did not expect that. Rigby came in and then fell to the Sea Serpent as well, and so did Mandy. This thing is tearing my team apart. I got it low at this point, so I brought in Blossom, who was comfortably able to take it out with one single quick attack. Murkrow came in and Blossom was able to deal with that as well. Then the Pyroar man actually brought out a Pyroar. What's the lore here, bro? Is that your dad? Regardless, Gumball O-coded it and we won the battle. Lysandra started venting on about how he'd invested in his lab to focus on creating a better world. Then he realized that everyone was a fool and he pretty much pivoted to the epiphany that it wasn't worth saving anyone. We should all burn. And instead, he should place his focus in cleansing the world of its inhumane regime and its imbalanced structure. Then he essentially gave me a blueprint to how I could stop his plans, and so I made my way through the big man's lab to an office where an admin was holding the key to an elevator. I beat her up, she gave me the key, I used the elevator and found myself in Lysandra's dungeon where he kept that giant guy from earlier in a cell so small that he couldn't even lay down. Then I heard out his story about a man who had a Pokemon whom he loved very much, and how a war broke out and his beloved Pokemon took part. And essentially how the Pokemon was killed after several years of unnecessary war. The man wanted to revive the Pokemon, and in his rage he built a machine to resurrect the Pokemon. Although that alone wasn't enough to quench his rage, and he wanted revenge for what the world did to his beloved Pokemon. He made the ultimate death weapon designed to end the war once and for all, and the Pokemon was too remorseful and realized that during the process of being brought back to life, the man had sacrificed people and Pokemon alike, and so the Pokemon left the man, leaving him with nothing but a broken world. Which is intense. That storyline is one that I can back, bro. So the giant behind bars warned Lysandra to revert his decisions and stop this madness. Turns out the man in the story was none other than AZ, who we find out to be this caged giant issuing the warning, which opens up just a flood of questions. How are you still alive? What happened to the Pokemon? Why are you so tall? Not as tall as me, but still. Regardless, Lysandra ignores the warning and walks off deeper into his laboratory. Following him, I find myself face to face with his pale-faced SPF 1 million sporting minion Xerosic. I battled him and took out his Crobat and his Malamar respectively. After proving my skills, Xerosic put the fate of Kalos in my hands. We're presented with a blue button and a red button, and apparently one of them sets off the ultimate weapon, and I have to decide which one to press. Which, like, what? Why did you design it that way? I pressed the blue button, but it doesn't matter, because apparently, even though I chose correctly, he's going to activate the weapon. What a power play. We watch helplessly as the weapon emerges from the ground at Geosenge, and sparing no breaths, I made my way to the town. When I arrived, the Super Mega Ultra Death Cannon was erect, and all the little houses were adorably scattered around like Legos. However, after beating the grunt who was stood between me and I guess another lab, I made my way to find Lysandra staring down what looks like the legendary Pokemon that he somehow managed to subdue. Lysandra then admits that further to his plan to erase, well, everything, he also wants to eliminate all Pokemon because he believes that they will only grow to be used for war and theft. He challenges me again, this time in an attempt to stop us from releasing the legendary Pokemon Xerneas. After defeating him again, I beat everyone else on my descent towards the legendary. I woke up from his slumber and used my Master Ball to catch it. Lysandra came back cosplaying as Dr. Octopus and were thrust into our final battle with the big bad. He led as Mienshao and I led Garchomp. Huckleberry won the one-on-one no problem, and as Lysandra brought out his doppelganger, I brought in Gumball, who managed to OHKO. Honchkrow hit the field, so Raven was the choice. Raven did a lot of damage with a T-Bolt, but then fell to one single crit Night Slash. Then I opted for Blossom, who was comfortably able to KO with Flame Charge. Gyarados came in, Mega Evolved, and for the first time I opted to follow suit. I Mega Evolved our Venusaur to use Poison Powder followed by Venoshock to KO Lysandra's final Gambit, and so we take the win no problem. However, the ultimate weapon was still set off. We were too late. In the fray, I rushed out and watched in awe as the ultimate death weapon emitted a beam into space, and when it came back down, it struck itself, causing it to implode and sink its remains into the ground. I'm not sure if that's what was supposed to happen or if it malfunctioned, but regardless, AZ approached and professed his grief for the story told earlier, and said that he hopes to one day reunite with the Pokemon with eternal life, roaming the planet somewhere. So now with the box art Pokemon in the bag and the drama over with, it's time to progress onwards. We still have a lot of ground to cover. On Route 18, I caught the prince of all Pokemon, Geodude, Torkoal, Gurdurr, Graveler, Sandslash, Lairon, and Durant. Then I made my way to Terminus Cave to pick up Brick Break, catch Ariados, and leave. And that, my friends, brings us to Kuruway Town. As I made my way south, I was jump scared by Sycamore. He apologized for the trouble that Lysandra caused and thanked me for seeing through his ruse and saving the world. Professor Hercules then asks me to take everything I've learned from Pokemon battling and show him a thing or two. So I humored him, and in sequential order, I beat up his Venusaur, his Blastoise, and his Charizard. He then thanked me for indulging him, and he moved on. On Route 19, I caught Drapion, then got interrupted at the bridge for a battle with Shauna. So after wiping the floor with her team, I didn't get a second to breathe before Tierno and Trevor pulled through and asked for a shot at the Geodude throne as well. After beating the lot of them, I got on with catching the rest of the encounters on this route. After arriving at Snowbell City, I came to find out that the gym leader wasn't available, and so I went straight to Route 20 to cross off some more encounters. I got a Mungus, Noctowl, Zoroark, Gothorita, Jigglypuff, Trevenant, and then I had to use a Combi to horde encounter Trevenant with a minuscule chance of a Sudowoodo spawning amongst them, which is adorable. Anyway, after a while I got it. The forest area is a weird one, but in making my way through Route 20, I found myself at the Pokemon Village, where I just so happened to find the gym leader having a wholesome moment connecting with nature and the Pokemon around him. They all seem to gravitate towards him, unthreatened, unburdened. Anyway, he says that the Pokemon Village is a secret sanctuary for Pokemon who have escaped bad trainers who abused them. And the first thought that hit my brain was maybe this is where the Pokemon AZ was talking about would have escaped to. Regardless, he tells me that my Pokemon think highly of me and asks if I want to challenge his gym. He headed back and I followed him. I made my way in and solved the rotating platform puzzle, beating every gym trainer in my path, and finally found myself stood here facing my final gym battle. So let's do this. Wolfrig leads at Abomasnow, but Blossom's quad-effective Flame Charge was enough to OHKO. Against Cryogonal, I lost Mandy to self-inflicted confusion damage after a belly drum, so that was dumb. Blossom came back in and another Flame Charge OHKOs. Avalugg came in, and even though its physical defense is astronomical, Flame Charge did okay-ish damage. After landing another, we burned it, then Blossom fell, but Gumball was comfortably able to come through and finish what the others had started. And on that, we have every single gym badge of the region, and the TM for Ice Beam. Let's evaluate. The storyline with AZ I'm a fan of, but it opens a door that they never closed. It's been a decade, and sure, Pokemon Legends ZA might answer some things, but with AZ, the part of the power plant that we were never able to access, the literal Pokemon AZ's Floette being coded into the game, yet never making an appearance, it leaves me just a bit empty. I need resolution. I need closure. Progressing onwards, on Route 21, I caught Spinda, Ursaring, Scyther, Altaria, and evolved Raven, which, in hindsight, I should have done about 3 blue moons ago. Regardless, I got my badges checked at the gate of Victory Road, and once they were satisfied that I had all 8, the man guarding the gate challenged me to a battle, and we won, which then grants us access to the cutscene leading us into the tunnel. I then headed on upstairs into a cave. In Victory Road, I caught Lickitung, Zweilous, and Druddigon. I watched the next cutscene unfold, and Serena challenged me to a battle that, honestly, we won with ease. Finally, we arrived at the gates of the Elite Four, which in this game is just an awesome looking building. And since in this game you can choose which order you fight them in, I shot for Malva first, because against the fire types that she wields, Gumball could easily solo. Pyroar, Talonflame, Torkoal, Chandelure. That was it. They all fell prey to our Greninja. Next up was Wikstrom, the master of steel types. Blossom KO'd Klefki, Gumball took out the Probopass, our Lapras, which I completely forgot to rename, managed to deal with the Aegislash, and after losing Raven and Gumball to the Scizor, Garchomp could comfortably finish it off. Seabold was third up, so Raven KO's his Clawitzer, and then proceeded to KO the Gyarados with a quad effective T-Ball. Against Barbaracle, I shot for Rigby to Mega Evolve and use Petal Blizzard, which is quad effective, so, you know, it dies instantly. Then against Starmie, the same thing transpired, and we took that battle as well. Finally, we find ourselves up against the Dragon Tamer Drazna. She leads Dragalge, and I lead Lapras. A couple of Ice Beams KO, and we're on to Druddigan, who gets frozen on its first turn in, so, I mean, you know. Altaria is the penultimate Pokemon, and even though it put Lapras to sleep, we walled a few hits before eventually waking up and OHKOing with a quad effective Ice Beam. So then Noivern is the final mon of the Elite Four challenge, and since I taught Gumball the TM for Ice Beam, we were comfortably able to use that to kill the final dragon. And with that, we were granted access to the champion, Diantha. One thing I'll say on reflection here is I really don't love how not one single important trainer or gym leader or even the ultimate antagonist boss fight have a full team of Pokemon. Including the Elite Four, by the way, none of them have 6 Pokemon. Aren't these guys supposed to be the best? Like, at this point, I don't know. Without the Nuzlocke format, it feels just too easy. Like, I don't have to earn it. Regardless, we move on fourth to Diantha, who leads a Hawlucha. Hawlucha falls to Ice Beam from Gumball, and then Goodra comes in, and after a whole lot of back and forth, some healing, some freezing, it goes down to Ice Beam from Gumball as well. Aurorus then hit the field, but died to a Surf from Gumball, and on the Gourgeist switch, I pivoted over to Blossom, who's comfortably able to OHKO with acrobatics. So, after losing Lapras to a single head smash from Tyrantrum, Gumball came through and killed with a Surf. When Gardevoir came in, I swapped on over to Raven. Diantha Mega evolved her Ace, and although Raven was able to get off a few hits and paralyze in the process, Moonblasts were just a bit too much to take, and so Blossom had to come in and finish the job. But with that, my friends, we'd beaten the champion. I stepped forward, placed my Pokemon on their golden throne, and claimed my title as the Kalos champion. Upon leaving, we're cheered on along with our friends, and we're awarded a medal from the professor to officially decorate me with my champion status. Interestingly, AZ came back out of nowhere and demanded a battle so that he could truly feel and experience what the presence of a trainer really is. And after beating him to a pulp with my Pokemon unwavering by my side, he was ecstatic, enthralled, overwhelmed. He was synonyms. And he exclaimed that he felt free from the shackles of his past mistakes. Poetically, as he finally expelled his burden of hatred and greed, AZ's Floette returned from the sky and our giant friend was reunited with his best friend. The credits roll and the game was over. Except, it wasn't, because remember, we're doing everything. There's still a fat mountain to climb. I awaken in my house again, almost as if starting a new chapter, and go downstairs where we meet our mother, who pretty much said that she was too lazy to come watch our champion crowning, so watched from home instead. She says that the professor wants to meet at Lumiose station, so I left, and on leaving, we were met with Shauna, who wants me to trade one of my Pokemon for an egg that her Delphox had laid. So I gave her a bug. We don't get to nickname the Fennekin, so I guess this is Kinnykins? Kinnykins. That's a bad name. I headed straight for the Lumiose train station, and when I got there, Dexio and Cena upgraded my Dex, giving us access to the national Dex of Kalos, which is like 700 plus Pokemon. So I found Sycamore, and he gave us a pass to Kilood City. I'll tell you, I am not excited for what we have to do there. But need as must. I put my ticket in the machine and got on board towards Kilood. I looked around, found the battle mansion, and went in. I did a single battle to trigger Serena showing up in the city. And so after winning just one, I left and made my way up to the top of the city where Serena was waiting for one final battle to end the rivalry that was carried throughout our journey. She led Meowstic, we killed it. She brought in Clefable, we killed it. She brought in Vaporeon, the YouTube comment said something gross, and then we killed it. She brought in Chestnut, and we killed it. And then she brought in Altaria, and we killed it. Finally, Absol hit the field, Mega evolved, and grew wings, and we killed it. So I guess that's that. I made my way back to Anistar City, where I could make my way to a grand but peculiar shining stone. And alongside it, Professor Chalamet was there. He said he found a way to upgrade our Mega Rings, and so by touching the ring to some huge glowing sundial, the ring uses the energy exposed to it when we caught Xerneas to upgrade. Science! Now, it's time for what I can say in hindsight was one of the most fun post-game experiences that I've ever had. The detective missions. Listen, if you played this game to the credits and no further, I implore you, whip out the old 3DS and get cooking. Let me show you why. So when heading back to Lumiose, we received a Holocaster alert. The message was anonymous, but it said that it was a matter of urgency and that I should meet them at the Looker Bureau. Looker? Where have I heard that name before? Regardless, my friends, welcome to Chapter 1. I made my way to the Bureau where a dapper man in a trench coat was there to greet me. He introduced himself as the detective. Then he tells me about myself to prove his accolade as a PI. He said that he knows that I'm the Kalos champion and that I saved the world from Team Flare. Amazing detective work there, Sherlock. Not as if it was all over the news or there was a city halting parade or anything. He tells me that his code name is Looker and that Lumiose is riddled with underground trouble, as it's a destination known all over the world where many visitors from all over come to enjoy what it has to offer. And so the tourism often gets taken advantage of. Looker went on to say how he wants to make a change and decided to open up the Bureau. He extends his welcome and proposes that we team up to make the city safe again. So after agreeing, he tells me that I need some detective training, and with that, my friends, we're on to the first mission. I'm given the task of finding some Looker tickets scattered around the city, and to get each one, I need to follow some riddles, giving me clues that would eventually lead me to the next one. I found the first ticket at the Pokemon Center in the Magenta Magenta Plaza, which then led me to the very bottom floor of the Lumiose gym, then to the herborist shop, which then took me to the far right of the bottom floor of the Hotel Richissime. I'm trying my best. I'm trying. Stop laughing at me. I'm trying. And then finally, the final ticket I found in the museum. I reported the tickets back to Luca, who is now confident enough in my abilities to officially sign me up as his partner in crime. Or I guess his partner against crime. The Mustang to his Sally. The John to his Sherlock. The Bonnie to his Clyde. But I guess the exact opposite of that. Since that was considered my first detective mission, we move on to our first real mission. At the bureau, Luca tells me that we have a case to solve and recites the note left on his desk, which read, "Kids in Lumiose seem to be spending a lot of time in the back alleys. What are they up to in these shadowy, suspicious places? Inquisitive and worried mothers want to know. My son's about to take an entrance exam and I can't have him doing anything stupid to get a black mark on his academic record. You must do something to stop the kids hanging out in the back alleys." Luca then notes the locations of each alley to help us find the kids and ultimately stop whatever drug ring they've got going on. After some investigating, I find a bunch of adolescents hiding out in an alley, each forcing me into battle to try stop me from reaching the end. But why? I didn't hold back, and so naturally they all got stomped. The detective then joined me and a very territorial Esper came out of nowhere. Come to find out, this Esper, who's apparently called Mimi, belongs to a girl who's acting leader of the toddlers. She explains that Mimi is her friend and not her Pokemon because she doesn't have enough money to buy any Pokeballs to capture it properly. Which is really sad, but the lore went even deeper because we then find out that this girl has been sleeping in the alley because her parents are gone. Luca takes her in and says that she can stay in his office so to keep her off the streets, and of course that Mimi can stay as well. Which, in response to my dismay, the Esper, Mimi, ran away. I scurried to try and find her, and after chasing her all around the back alleys of the city, I managed to, I guess, dance and make it stay put. Mimi then started to show us some affection, and the pair agreed to live in the bureau. The girl finally felt comfortable enough to reveal her name as Emma, and so with our work here done, I split off and Luca parted, saying that he would call me if he needs me. And that was that. But not too late after, I get a call that something important has transpired and I need to make my way back to the bureau. Luca then expresses his concern towards Emma and how she seems really stressed. A tourist from Japan showed up and started explaining stuff in Japanese. The woman seems gravely stressed, but neither me or Luca can understand the woman. I think this is Pokemon's way of hinting at Paris syndrome, which is what a lot of Japanese tourists experience, specifically in France, since France is a romanticized place in Japan. Luca believed that this lady was distressed because she hasn't yet been offered tea. Which, look at me, I can't tell if that makes you racist or, what, but Emma makes an appearance with Mimi and seems to understand and speak the lady's native tongue. So in a very strange chain of events, it turns out that Esper has the innate ability to translate the foreign woman's words to us. The translated thoughts show that this lady's purse has been stolen by the train station. So without a second thought, I ran to the crime scene. I found some punks and punished them for what they did to this sweet tourist lady. The leader of the criminal group decided that what they did was wrong, and he came to the bureau where he proclaims that he wants to do better in life and says that his gang will be trying to go about life doing honest work from here on out. Apparently that was enough to get them off scot-free. Emma was then left alone with Mimi and explained that with Luca's help she's able to read, and she's been reading signs on part-time work. She decided that it was time for her to be more independent and go out in search of a job to make her life a little bit more stable. That leads us to our next mission. Once again, Luca calls me and tells me that there's a situation. I found him at his office peering out through the blinds. He tells us that Emma keeps disappearing, and he wanted to ask her to look after the bureau today, but he just couldn't find her. He thought she might not have come home last night and fears the worst. We then received a call and chapter 4 was in full effect. An unforgivable crime. A newscaster broadcasts that someone broke into the museum last night and destroyed a painting. And without hesitating, Luca sent me to get to the bottom of this act of heinous vandalism. I got to the museum and headed to the 3rd floor where a once magnificent work of art was hung up and defiled. I met the director who seemed distraught by the violated masterpiece. Then when I returned to the bureau to report my findings, Luca explained that there have been Pokemon being stolen as well. Apparently these crooks are targeting trainers where there are no witnesses. So Luca devised a plan to lure the criminals out and trap them. We found the first culprit in an alleyway where they tried to steal my Pokemon after losing to me in combat. The same thing then happened again, and then in the 3rd alley we find a victim of these crooks, who says that the mysterious figure stealing all these Pokemon was a woman and was headed to the alley in South Boulevard. When we get there, we're confronted with the masked figure. After beating her in the South Boulevard alley and trying to arrest her for the 4th time, Mimi appeared out of nowhere and gravitated immediately to the masked figure. Then Luca seemed to have put 2 and 2 together and deciphers that the woman underneath the suit was none other than Emma. The masked figure remains unresponsive until they get a headache and manage to escape. However, before disappearing, they struck Luca, leaving him with some serious injuries, which leads us to detective mission number 5. I was zoned in. This storyline had me hooked. I genuinely can't believe what I'm seeing here. This time round, it was actually Emma who called me. She asked me to meet at the bureau, and after telling her that Luca was sent to the hospital last night, she seemed mortified. She looked at the time and said that she was going to be late, and coincidentally, as she was leaving, a posh man entered and asked if I was Master Gentle Dude from the Luca bureau. He then challenged me to a battle to test my worthiness before deciding if he wanted my help or not. After trampling him and his team, he says that his mistress is not a patient woman and would like to see me at the Richissime Hotel as soon as possible. So I made my way to the hotel, and in the 5th floor, she was waiting for me in her room. Infuriated at the lateness of my arrival, she challenged me to a battle, which is okay. Turns out she was none other than the Fire Elite 4 member Malva. Well, I made her regret her candor as I floored her only Pokemon Pyroar with ease. She revealed that she had intel on some crooks she'd like for us to pursue. She revealed that there's a trainer going by the name Essentia, but her real name is Emma. All but confirming that this is the same Emma that we know that keeps disappearing. She seems to be working under the very same Team Flare scientists who developed the weapon that nearly took out Kalos. We made our way to the very lab where we originally caught Xerneas, and after making my way through various puzzles and defeating a bunch of scientists on the way, I found myself in a room with a library in it, and amongst the books I found some disturbing notations of Emma's training. And in digging a little deeper, I found that she was being controlled by the Team Flare regime. Eventually, Dr. Xerosic heard about my presence in the labs and came after me, alongside Emma. They appeared out of nowhere, and I repeatedly fought Emma, taking her higher each time in her max percentage each battle. After beating her at her maximum strength, she manages to fight through the suit's control, and the real Emma regains consciousness. Coincidentally, Looker arrived just then, arrested the mad scientist, and Emma was returned safely home. The scientist openly admitted that Emma had no control over her actions, and that he, Xerosic, was the mastermind behind it all. Looker reveals himself as a member of the International Police Force and states that he'll be leaving town. Emma, in a fit of rage and upset, ran away. Although for some reason, Looker invited Xerosic to dinner before heading off. Which brings us now to chapter 6, where Emma calls me back to the office and tells me that Looker's finally getting out of hospital. And as Mimi comes to join us, Emma exclaims that she wants everyone to be together to welcome Looker back. Although in her joy, Emma noticed that Mimi was holding something in her mouth, and picking it out, she realized that it's a letter from Mr. Looker. To my dearest friends, I must have but a moment of your time. It is I, the great Detective Looker. I write to you today because there's something that I must confess to you. He goes on to say that he's actually an officer of the International Police. His hospital trip apparently was a ruse to keep everyone out of harm's way, and although he only had good intentions, he still lied to us and apologizes for such. He says that he came to this region on a top secret case, and now, with our help, the case was officially closed, which also leads on to mean that Looker's time in Kalos was over. Painfully, he thanks us for our assistance and bids us adieu. After crying real tears and splitting off, Emma called me saying that she's got a message from Xerosic, apparently claiming that both him and Looker were at Lysandra Cafe. In my eyes, that sounds like it would have been a trap, but no. I got to the cafe and Looker was surprised to see us. He expected a swift exit without being noticed, but instead we shared a very wholesome, misfit family-like moment where we exchanged some real words of real feeling, and Emma really bleeds her emotions onto Mr. Looker. A girl with no family being forced to say goodbye to both father figures she'd come across on her path. Looker asked Emma to look after the bureau permanently, effective immediately, and then Looker leaves forever. Back at the office, we see Emma contemplating life, and even says, "Is that what it's like to have a father?" But she's a positive girly and laughs it off. And with a deep breath, my friends, the storyline of the detective missions was entirely behind us. What a journey! I hadn't ever experienced this until now, and wow, I was absolutely taken aback by it. This game just earned some serious brownie points off the back of that, I'll tell you that much for free. But the 100%ing doesn't end there. Next on my list was to catch all the legendaries available before doing any of the tedious retracing. We could find Mewtwo chilling in a cave called the Unknown Dungeon. Since I chose Froakie, I could get Moltres of the 3 legendary birds. Essentially, you have to play the wildfire chicken chase until it makes its way to the Spirit Sea Den, where you can eventually catch it. Also, as a side note, on my way to encounter Moltres, I found another Snorlax, so that makes up for the one that I missed out on earlier. In Terminus Cave, just past Route 18, was none other than Zygarde, just sort of chilling there. Little underwhelming considering this is the first time we actually get to see it, but hey ho. Every other legendary I was able to trade for. This was recorded pre-3DS Online takedown, so I got really lucky to be able to run it in time. Next up on the old to-do list was Mega Stones. In Ambret Town, a scientist gave me the Aerodactylite. In Azure Bay, some remote guy on an island gave me the Ampharosite. Diantha, for whatever reason, lets me trade my Love Disc for her Routes, and that Routes holds the Gardevoirite. In Reflection Cave, in a secret room, lies the Alakazite. In Laverre, the Medichamite was glowing in front of a well in the middle of the city, and in that same place, I could speak to a mysterious girl at the top left who would give me the Gengarite. There's a spot in the Chamber of Emptiness where I can find the Megastone for Bayonet. After picking up Rock Smash, which I hadn't done, I flew to Santaloon and made my way to the Pokemon League. And just outside of the cave, I could use Rock Smash to access the Northeast Tower and pick up the Garchomp. Gyarados' Megastone was located in Kuroe Town. Kangaskhan's was in the Glittering Cave. Manectrix was just on the other side of the Lost Hotel at the bottom of a valley. Mawile was in the Shabanu Castle. Pinsirite was in the Santaloon Forest. The Scissorite was in Frost Cavern. Then finally, the Tyranitarite was actually in the Silage City Gym, which was creative. I like that. I won't bore you with the details, but I then went on to pick up every single TM available. It was long, but I did do it. And I won't lie, in hindsight, I don't think it added much to this challenge, but I'm committed. I said I'd do it all, so I'm doing it all. Then it was time for one of the longest things to do. I went back through every single route, caught, traded, and hatched so many Pokemon that I lost count, all to end up with a living dex in Pokemon X and Y before the servers shut down. And finally, after collecting every single berry available, it was time for our final feat, the Starf berry. You see, my friends, in order to get the Landsat berry, you have to win 100 battles in a row in the battle mansion in Shalour City. And a 200 win streak, as in 200 wins consecutively, you're bestowed with a Starf berry, which is dumb. To get a lot of the berries, I also had to plant some mutated berries, so I looked up the different berry compositions to get the other mutated berries. You plant 3 of the same berry in some compost at the top of the berry field to get 3 bags of surprise mulch, to then plant the berries. You have to plant the combo of berries next to each other, and they'll grow as whatever the corresponding berry line is. And my friends, after beating the game and the post game and getting every TM and every megastone and completing a freaking live index and getting every single berry available to my knowledge, it's over. Listen, there might be things here that I missed, there might be things here that I made mistakes with, but I know in my heart that I did everything I thought possible, and with that, my friends, I can put Pokemon X and Y to bed with an accomplished smile on my face. And I'll tell you, I had a good time. It has its flaws, sure, the pacing wasn't perfect, sure, they left a whole lot of unanswered questions and cliffhangers and character arcs that led nowhere, but all in all, it was a fun experience. I don't regret my Kalos journey, and for all the bads, there's a lot of goods. Look for the silver linings and you'll find them. As with life, my friends, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate you. Bye.